Look, I think this bill's very dangerous. There's pretty clear evidence looking across different states and looking when health insurance has been phased in and out. When people lose health insurance, they're less likely to get preventive care, they're more likely to defer health care they need, and ultimately they're more likely to die. My piece explains why an estimate that thousands will die as a consequence of this bill is actually a very conservative estimate.
Larry Summers, being fair and balanced in his assessment, former Treasury Secretary and now very confident professor at some Ivy League school that we all can't get into. Joining us now is Senator Bill Cassidy, who's worked hard on the Senate version of this bill and will play a role in the overall construction of the bill as they merge with the House. Senator Cassidy, you're a smart guy. You're on the inside making this legislation. Is Larry Summers right? People will die because of this?
Larry Summers is so totally wrong, it's hard to know where to begin.
You're a doctor.
Well, let's just look at the literature. Jonathan Gruber, the so-called architect of Obamacare, after Obamacare started, they had the individual mandate kick in. He wrote a paper for the National Bureau of Economic Research and then was published as well in the New England Journal of Medicine. They found the individual mandate had no significant effect upon increasing enrollment in Obamacare. Now think about it. Here's the guy that wrote the bill, at least that's what we're told, and he's finding that it doesn't have an effect. Now, I can go on beyond that, but that's the most important thing. What I would point out to Mr. Summers is that 78% of the people paying the penalty under the mandate have an income of $50,000 or less. And so it's easy for the elite to say we're going to stick it to the little guy on something that doesn't work. But I think it's incredibly unfair to us, that to the rest of us who we have Obamacare foisted upon us, to make us pay for something, Brian, that doesn't work.
Yeah, so what you're doing is, at least on your version, you guys get rid of the mandate. So allow people to make a decision. They're going to have insurance or not have insurance, especially with these exchanges jacking up the price of these insurance options, as well as the deductibles, which in all practical purposes make in some cases like you don't have insurance. So Senator Cassidy, are you also touching anything to do with Medicare that would affect Summers' conclusion?
Summers is trying to say that there's going to be sequestration kicked in or something like that. And both McConnell and Paul Ryan have said that is not going to happen. Medicare will not be touched. And so there's a lot of Larry's usually, I disagree with him on most things, but I usually find him a fairly honest analyst, and that ain't happening on this one. That is pure kind of left wing. We want to scare you into opposing something that's going to be good for middle America.
Senator, when you looked at this bill, you had to do a lot of things to get Senator Jeff Flake on board. You never got Corker, but you did get Collins. What are you concerned with as we go into conference now?
I think the Senate bill is a pretty good bill, and so I'm hoping it doesn't change too much out of the Senate bill. Some of the things we did, for example, we preserved the ability for people who have big medical bills to deduct that from their taxes. I think that's a good thing. I say that as a physician. We want people to be able to take financial accountability for their bills, but sometimes they mount up too high. So I think it's a good thing. We preserve that in the Senate bill as opposed to the House side. I'm hoping they go more with our version.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Who are the conferees on the Senate side?
I'm not really sure. You know, it's going to be Hatch and it's going to be Leader McConnell, Mitch McConnell. I'm not sure. Probably Portman, Toomey, and Scott and Thune. I'm guessing those four because I'm just guessing they are, but I don't know that chapter and verse, Brian.
First off, too, when you talk about the president getting involved, how was his role in this different with his role in repeal and replace?
Well, the president was engaged in both. I think that there was more understanding of what we're trying to do with the tax bill. He's still engaged in repeal and replace. He wants to see that happen sometime in spring next year. But at some point, you got to have senators and representatives willing to vote yes. We got them on the tax bill.
Do you feel as though the president made the right decision in giving a full-throated endorsement on Roy Moore for the Senate seat?
I can't comment on the president's actions. I retracted my endorsement of Roy Moore, and now it's up to the people of Alabama to decide. But on a personal level, I just decided I don't want to be there.
So does that still stand?
That still stands.
Do you feel the same way about Al Franken? Do you think he should not be there?
Again, it's up to the people of Minnesota to decide, and it's unclear. It's up to the people of Minnesota to decide. But if Al Franken has been involved in this kind of activity as a senator, that's problematic. On the other hand, there is a difference between a 14-year-old girl and an adult female. I will say that.
Yeah, it's so weird we have to drill down like this, but that's the climate right now in this country. I want to move over to the president's decision to move the the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Even the Pope does not want him to do this. Jordan doesn't want him to do this. France doesn't want him to do this. Does Senator Bill Cassidy want him to do this?
Yes.
Why?
The president said he's going to do it. I think previous presidents have said they wish to do it. It is up to Israel to decide where their capital is. I don't think it makes a difference otherwise, and I think that there's a lot of things in the Middle East that will be a bigger concern to the people in the Middle East, maybe not those folks on the West Bank, but for folks elsewhere. And for whatever reason, the symbolism of it, I don't think should stop what the Israelis choose to call their capital.
Right, and Senator Schumer, and you agree. Can you believe that?
Every now and then.
Right.
Every now and then. A blind hog finds an acorn every now and then, so every now and then Schumer gets it right.
Senator, the president wants to fund the government. You want to fund the government extensively. The Democrats want to fund the government. They're going to meet today. Friday's the deadline. How do you fund the government? Where's the agreement there? What's the process?
We're going to get a 2 to 3 to 4 week process until we work out some agreements beyond that. The Republicans want to increase spending on the military. We see more hazards in the world, and we see a military which is stretched, and that stretched military is having bad implications for our sailors, our soldiers, our Marines. These ships crashing in the Far East, killing sailors, I'm told is a symptom of being overstretched. The left wants to demand some other spending because of that. We just got to find a meeting place.
Right. And do you feel as though there will be a meeting place? A week ago, Chuck and Nancy famously did not show up. They didn't like the president's tweet. They're going to ask for an immediate DACA fix. Where does Senator Cassidy stand?
I think we will find common ground. The president wants more security for the border. I think we all understand there has to be more security for the border. The president has also indicated if he gets security for the border, he's willing to do something on DACA. That may be where we end up.
I want you to hear what that's going to be interesting to see where we end up there. The president also says that the indications are after you're done with tax reform, that if this gets done before Christmas, as many predict, even some of your detractors, the next thing he's going to be looking at is welfare reform. Would that be something that you would hope he'd start at?
I think simple answer, yes. I mean, there's other things to look at as well. We have an infrastructure package he's spoken about. Our country needs an infrastructure package. We've got a lot of folks that would have better jobs with better wages in my state, Louisiana, as well as elsewhere if we had that going. And you got to queue things up. Welfare reform is a good thing to do. Infrastructure is something I'm also really interested in. There's a bridge in Baton Rouge, a bridge in Lafayette, and an overpass in Shreveport I'd love to get done. So either of those would be a good place to go next.
Right. Speaking of that, I wrote Andrew Jackson, The Miracle of New Orleans. I had a chance to spend a lot of time there. I will say one thing. If you're going to be doing any type of TV shoot in New Orleans, outdoors, don't do it in August. Would you also back that up? I had to change 9 shirts before I got it done, just by walking outside. I didn't know it was so hot.
You were. I know exactly where you were. You're probably at the Chalmette National Park, wherever they had the battle.
Yes.
And you get some breeze there, but you go to Louisiana in the August. That's not the place to be. Come in April, come in October. It's gorgeous.
Absolutely. Now you got some good news, right? LSU is back in the Citrus Bowl, and this time you play that low-profile team, Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We always have more Catholics on our team than Notre Dame has on theirs, and so that's just kind of the nature of we are as a state. But it's going to be a great game. We feel like our program's coming back.
Wow, very interesting. And lastly, I want you to hear what Chris Matthews said when it comes to Alabama voters, and see if he's speaking of Christians. I want to see if you agree. Cut 25.
That election is going to be really tough for the country and the world. I think everybody in the world's watching this Alabama election, and I think it's because the only way that the Republican candidate can win, and he is the Republican candidate, that's the heart of this thing, is by going after the issue of abortion, which is a powerful issue down there. And I think he's going to win.
Yeah,
I'll just say, the reason I think he's going to win is for an evangelical Christian to go into that voting booth and vote for abortion is unimaginable. To vote for gay marriage probably is unimaginable. But they can vote to forgive a fellow Christian.
Right.
And I think that's how it's going to work. And we may not like the looks of it, but looking at it down there, I think that's what's going to happen.
I mean, I don't spend a lot of time in Alabama before. Some of the nicest people I ever met were from Alabama. But do you think that's the theory?
I would go a little bit beyond that. The Democratic elite are so totally out of touch with people in Alabama, Louisiana, and elsewhere. When Larry Summers is advocating for an individual mandate which has no effect upon enrollment, but 78% of the folks have an adjusted gross income of $50,000 or less, that is a Democratic elite that is out of control. And if you go to Alabama, what they're most upset about is people in Washington dictating their life. They're probably concerned that Doug Jones is going to do more of that, or at least support people like Chuck Schumer who want to do more of that. And they just are tired of Democratic elite ruling their life. If Roy Moore wins, I think that's going to be the reason.
So I think that the president's looking at it a practical way. By the way, the only way to forgive somebody if they ask for it, he does not admit to anything.
Yep, that's true.
Just ugly. December 12th, we'll find out what's going to happen, Senator, and then you guys will be back to work, hopefully, before that. Senator Bill Cassidy, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.